Hey guys, so in my last video, meet the new schism, same as the old schism, I laid out the strategy of Satan. Although Satan uses men to create schism, make no mistake, we battle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual principalities, dark spiritual principalities in high places. Now, the devil isn't going to come at you all scary looking. He's going to come at you like an angel of light. This is why these false teachers are called wolves in sheep clothing. And this is why I always go after the biggest wolf, because the biggest wolf kills the most sheep. Now, the tactics and strategy is different. Strategy is their plan, their goal. The tactic they use several. I'm going to share them because every great military planner knows you need to know your enemy's plan. You need to know what he's thinking, his strategy and tactics. So I've been watching these schismatics for quite a few years now. And this is a couple of the tactics. First, they lie. They want to get you to hate Pope Francis. So listening to them is like listening to CNN report on President Trump. And I've done this so many times where I've showed you what these guys have said Pope Francis has said. I'll show you the video, and then I'll show you what Pope Francis actually said. And I'm not the only one doing it. There's several other guys, the Catholic Brothers, Reason and Theology. There's a lot of guys, Catholics for Rednecks. A lot of guys point this out. I'm not the only one pointing out that these guys lie. And the tactic is they're selling schism. And, you know, in sales, the first thing you learn, the best salesmen get their customers to like them and trust them. And these guys, their followers will trust anything they say. I will literally show them that they lied, and I'll get in the comments that I'm committing the sin of calumny, which means I'm lying about the person, and I'm showing that the person's lying. And I'll look at the user's name, and I'll go on that person's videos, and I'll be like, oh, you're a saint. You're so awesome. I thank God for you. You're doing the work of God. Keep up the good work. As they're calling the Pope a heretic and lying about the Pope. So, anyway, so that's one of their tactics. But over the years, they understood if you put a frog in boiling water, that frog is going to jump out. So they've been slowly turning up the heat. They get you to like you, trust you. Come on, jump in this pot with me. You know, we're traditionalists. And then they use something beautiful, something from God. You know, Satan used scriptures against Jesus. You know, so Satan has no problem using things of God. Use something beautiful of God that so many of my brothers and sisters that I know love the Lord have found so much peace and so much grace and so much power from. It's called the Latin Mass. They use that to cause division. Now, it's a small group of these guys. You know, most Latin Mass guys that I know, you know, like Keith Nestor, Dr. Scott Hahn, these guys love the Latin Mass. But they would never use that against us, guys that go to the Novus Order. And like me, when they came into the Catholic Church from Protestantism, they walked in off the street to a Novus Order Mass. And all these guys, Steve Ray, we all have the same testimony. We knew we were in God's house. We felt the presence of God in the Eucharist. When we look at the apostolic man at the altar, the priest, and we hear the scriptures that we're praying and the scriptures that we're singing and the scriptures that the priest is saying, we realize this is the supper of the Lamb described in Revelations, and we all got teary-eyed and we all became Catholic. Now, some of us, I haven't had a chance to go to Latin Mass. All my brothers tell me I would love it, and I believe them. I believe these guys, but I don't have one near me. But Keith Nestor stumbled upon one, Scott Hahn went to one, and they love the Latin Mass. But they would never use it as a weapon against the church. There's a small percentage over the years, and the way they used it was by like saying that, you know, pointing out, you know, I think there's like 500,000 Novus Order Masses going on every day throughout the whole entire world. And there'll be 2 or 3 wackadoodle stuff, and they'll point it out like, this is what the new Mass is like, you know? And they just constantly pound years after years how horrible this is and how horrible Vatican II is, and years after years. And then they turn up the heat a little more and say, no, don't even go to the new mass. It's not even worth it to go, man. Just find yourself a Latin mass. And then they start acting the Latin mass is superior, where they're both valid and they're both licit. They're both good. You're getting the body and blood and divinity of Christ in both of them, but somehow they convince their followers that only the Latin mass is good. And so these people are afraid to go to a Novus Ordo. They'll drive hours to go to a Latin mass because they got them so fearful. And then, just like the liberals who accuse Donald Trump of being a fascist, and then during the COVID, when he gave each governor, what they call subsidiarity, you decide what's best for your state. They said, oh, he don't care about us. They wanted him to be a fascist. So all these people call Pope Francis a fascist. But when the bishops came to him in America and said, man, we're getting a lot of division. A lot of these guys are using the Latin mass to divide my flock. Pope Francis makes rules. But basically, he gave the bishops jurisdiction over their diocese to make the decision if they felt that they needed to limit the mass, or if they felt that it's okay, there's not division occurring. So a few bishops thought according to canon law. Oh, and then he also said, don't have it in the parish, have it in a chapel. I guess that was one of the rules. So some of the bishops thought according to canon law, they were making the right decision based on different circumstances. They could have it in the parish. Well, I guess it was Cardinal Roach, who's in charge of all this, said, no, according to what Pope Francis said, I don't think you can have it in the parish. So he went to Pope Francis and said, am I interpreting this right? Or are these bishops interpreting it right? And Pope Francis just recently made a decision, no, you're interpreting it right. So now these guys that use the Latin mass in the beginning are like, see, he's coming at us again. He wants to take this mass from us. He's evil. He's the devil. He hates the Latin mass. The devil hates the Latin mass. Well, you know what? The devil hates the Novus Ordo mass too, because the devil hates Jesus Christ, and he's in both of the masses. So the tactic is to get people so, not just in love. It's beautiful. People love the Latin mass. And, one day I want to go, and I'm sure I'll fall in love with it too, because of all that I heard about it. It sounds awesome. But instead of getting people to just love the Latin mass, they're getting people to hate the Novus Ordo. They're afraid, oh no, I'm going to have to go to a Novus Ordo. So I actually hear people on YouTube saying, we may have to go in schism over this. If he takes the Latin mass away, we have to go in schism. And no one's talking about taking the Latin mass. In fact, the church, I did a video the other day, and I read Romans 4, I think it is. God leads us to repentance with his kindness. The church has been bending over backwards for these people that are causing division. They don't want these people to split. They don't want another schism. This is why Pope, even though the SSPX mass is illicit, it's a traditional Latin mass. It's valid because they have apostolic succession. They're priests, but the mass is illicit because they're in disobedience to the Pope. But long story short, even Pope Benedict reached out to these guys, and then Pope Francis even reached out to these guys even further, having mercy, saying, okay, I'm going to give faculties back to your priests to hear confessions and have marriages, Even Bishop Barron, who these guys, I remember when I first came back to the church, I heard Bishop Barron, I loved him, and I hear these guys calling him a liberal and all kinds of vile names. I was like, Bishop Barron, he seems like, even when I was a Protestant, I would hear him debate Protestants. I was like, he don't seem like a liberal to me. And even he reached out recently in his diocese, and even Kennedy Hall had to give him props, at least he was honest and gave him props. He said, you guys can go in this beautiful chapel with a high altar, and he told the priest in charge, he said, be kind and, let the SSPX use it as well. I mean, so the church isn't coming at you guys. They just don't want, they know the Latin Mass is beautiful. They just know there's certain individuals that are using it as a weapon to divide us. I never hear a guy say, the Latin Mass is evil, go to Novus Ordo. You never hear it. It's always from one side. But it's a small percentage. Like I said, 90% of people that go to the Latin Mass are loving, on-fire Catholics. But you got that small, angry percentage that just wants schism. They're just addicted to schism. They want schism. They want you to hate. And they come off as nice and a wolf in sheep's clothing, an angel of light. slowly they're turning up the heat where there's so many Catholics that are telling me, oh, you go to Novus Order? Oh man. You're like, they're surprised. Well, I thought you were an on fire Catholic. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is a mass 90% of us go to, you know? So anyway, so that's the tactic. They lie. So verify everything you hear. Go to the source. Always go to the source. Don't take anybody's word. Don't even take my word. You know, I might misread. So I might be reading a bad source or something. That's why I always, when I source something, I always read 2 or 3 sources. Like my last video, I was talking about how the old Catholic cult split after Vatican I. They didn't accept Vatican I. And someone says, oh no, they've been around since the 1800s. Well, Vatican I was in the 1800s, number one. And what I think he meant, or her, I don't know if it was a guy, they were taking a pope's name, but whatever the person meant was, there was an old Catholic church before Vatican I. Yes, there was. They were in schism. But then a whole nother old Catholic church split. And there's like 20 different old Catholic churches. But it's very clear, history is clear, that they split because they did not accept Vatican I, just like the SSPX didn't accept Vatican II. And these schismatics that won't admit that are trying to get us not to accept it. Don't fall for this lie. Don't fall for this tactic. There's one church that Jesus Christ started. It's the one holy Catholic Apostolic Church. Don't let these schismatics divide us. Luther tried it. We still survived. The old Catholics tried it. We still survived. Marcel Levesque tried it. We still survived. And their churches are fading away. Those cults will fade away. They're splitting up. They're all splitting. Us, we're growing. The facts are, we're growing. The fact is, from Vatican II to today, the church has grown 100%. It's doubled in size. And they'll say, oh, well, the population's doubled in size. Well, these Protestant denominations and these cults haven't doubled in size. In fact, they've lost members. From 2010 to 2020, the Catholic Church has grown. With all this nonsense going on, it still is growing. It's been less abuse, less scandals, and more growth. And they'll say, oh, the growth is over in Africa and Asia. Well, praise the Lord, because that's where the on-fire Catholics are. And our Pope, Pope Francis, made more cardinals from those areas than any other pope. So the next pope, we have a much better chance of getting an on-fire Catholic from Africa, Asia. I would be thrilled. So anyway, just know we're in a spiritual battle, and never, ever go against the family. Never go against your Holy Father. Never go against the church. If you're not sure, even if someone is making so much sense, oh, this guy's so smart, he's so philosophical, he's so wise, if he's telling you to go against the church, run from him. Like I said in my last video, schism is a harlot. Run from it like Joseph ran away from Potiphar's wife. God bless, stay Catholic.